Hey, good morning or afternoon. Today we're doing 3.4 in Algebra 2. This is all about the zero product property. So it's just like what it sounds like. So the zero product property says that if I multiply two numbers and get a product of zero, so if I multiply two numbers and it equals zero, then either A or B, one of the numbers, or both have to equal zero. So my example would be 2 times x equals 0, so the x would have to be 0. Okay? I could also say, well, if the x is 4, then the 2, or whatever number this other number is, would have to be 0, or they would both have to be 0 to equal 0. Okay? So in using this, I'm going to be able to solve and tell where graphs touch the x-axis. Okay? Because when I am touching the x-axis, my y value, what they equal when they multiply, is 0. So let's take a look at how this works. Okay, so it says to factor this. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a greatest common factor. These all have -6 in common. So I'm going to pull that out, and I'm left with x squared minus 3x plus 2. Okay. So now I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to multiply my a times my c, just like we've done in the past. So 1 times 2, that's going to be 2x squared. And I'm going to find my factors. So 1x and 2x, or -1x and -2x. And that's going to be my answer because it adds to that -3x. Okay. So now I'm going to go on ahead and finish my factoring. So I'm going to say x squared minus 1x minus 2x plus 2. Do my factor by grouping, take an x out of here, and I'm left with x minus 1, and take a -2 out of here, and I'm left with x minus 1. Okay, so now my answers are that -6 I pulled out in the beginning times these two factors. So times my x minus 2 times my x minus 1. Okay, so now what I would be doing is graphing each of these. Well, here I would graph -6. Okay, so this would be y equals, okay, -6, okay, because these are all in this format. Okay, you have to realize that when you have this set equal to some number or some value f of x, it's really your y value. So my y equals that stuff. So y equals -6 would be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are really small. So there's y equals -6. Okay. So that one I'm not too concerned about. The reason is it's never going to touch my x-axis. Okay. So that one I'm not concerned about. But let's go on ahead and let's graph these other two that are now in linear form. So x minus 2. So I'm going to go graph -2 and go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Okay, so here's a graph of this, and I'm just going to sketch it in there. Okay. So this is my x minus 2. And the next one is x minus 1. So I start at -1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Okay, and I can sketch that one in. Okay. So this one is my x minus 1. And it says, hey, well, where do each of these touch the x-axis? Well, they touch at x equals +1 and x equals +2. Okay, so this is where, once again, our y equals 0, our f of x equals 0. So where our function, okay, when we multiply all these out, equals 0. Okay, if I was to plug a 2 in here, +2 and a +2, because that's one of the places it touches, well, then this whole piece would equal 0, and 0 times all of this other stuff is 0. Okay, so now let's take a look at how this works without graphing, because graphing is not always accurate. Okay, so we don't want to use accurate, or we don't want to use graphing to find where f of x equals 0. Okay, so we're going to follow these steps. We're going to set the equation equal to 0. So we're going to change the f of x, or the y part, to 0. Then we're going to factor completely. Okay, so let's start with that. So first I'm going to set this equal to 0, and then I'm going to work on my factoring. So now I'm just going to deal with this side. I'm going to do my a times c. Okay, so I have my x squared times my negative 6, and I get negative 6x squared. My factors would be 1 and negative 6, or negative 1 and 6, 2 and negative 3, or negative 2 and 3. I need my pair that adds to positive x, so that's this pair right here. Okay. Now I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to finish this out. So I have my x squared minus 2x plus 3x minus 6. Now I'm going to keep factoring, so I have 0 equals. Here I can take an x out, and I'm left with x minus 2. Here I can take a positive 3 out, and I'm left with x minus 2. So now there's my factors. So 0 equals x plus 3 or x minus 2. And I see I did not leave you guys enough room on your note packet. I apologize for that. But this is not the end. Remember, we need to solve for x. So now we're going to set each factor equal to 0. So we're going to say 0 equals x plus 3, because in order for this whole piece to equal 0, what would x need to be? And in order for this whole piece to equal 0, what would x need to be? So we're going to set each factor. So if I was doing it up here, I would also have to set this negative 6 or whatever I had pulled out in the beginning equal to 0 also. So sometimes you're going to have more than just 2 things set equal to 0. Okay, so now I'm just going to solve like normal. So minus 3, negative 3 equals x. Okay, so if I plug a negative 3 in here, then this equals 0. Then this whole thing is going to equal 0. So my x values will be negative 3, and add 2 to both sides. And I get 2 equals x. And so my other x value would be 2. So if I were to graph this function, which is a parabola, and we'll get into that more a little bit later, on a graph, it would touch the x-axis at negative 3 and 2. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at a couple more problems here. So this next one, here I have it 2x squared plus 9x equals 5. Well, I don't want it set equal to 5. I want it set equal to 0. So I need to subtract 5 from both sides, and I get 2x squared plus 9x minus 5 equals 0. Now I can go on ahead and solve it just like normal. So a times c would be negative 10x squared. And then I'm going to find my factors. So 1 and negative 10, negative 1 and 10, 2 and negative 5, negative 2 and 5. Okay, my pair that adds to 9x is this pair right here. So 2x squared minus 1x plus 10x minus 5, okay, equals 0. Let's go on ahead and finish factoring it. So we're going to factor by grouping. So here I can take an x out, and I'm left with 2x minus 1. Here I can take a positive 5 out, and I'm left with 2x minus 1. Okay. So now my factors would be x plus 5 and 2x minus 1. I need to set each of those equal to 0. Okay, and now I'm going to solve. So subtract 5 from both sides. Okay, and I get x equals negative 5. And here I'm going to add 1 to both sides. And then divide by 2. So I get x equals positive 1/2. So my answer for this is x equals negative 5 and x equals 1/2. Okay, both of these are answers. Let's take a look at the next one. So the next one here, I have 6x to the third plus 5x squared minus 4x equals f of x. Okay. So I was going to put an equal 0 over here. It doesn't matter which side the 0 is on as long as it equals 0 somewhere. But first, I'm going to look for greatest common factor. So I can take an x out of all of this, and I'm left with 6x squared plus 5x minus 4 equals 0. Multiply my a times c, so that x, I already know it's going to be one of my factors down here. It's going to be equal to 0. Okay, so now I can ignore that x for now and just deal with this trinomial. So a times c, 6 times -4, -24x squared, and I need the pair that adds to 5. Okay, so 1, -24, -124, 2, -12, -2, 12, 3, -8, -3, +8, and I've hit my pair right there. Okay, so you can keep going 4 and 6 if you would like, but if you hit your pair, double check the signs, and then we're good. Okay, so now I'm going to do my 6x squared minus 3x plus 8x minus 4. I'm going to continue factoring, so I'm going to pull a 3x out of here, and I'm left with 2x minus 1. And here I'm going to pull a 4 out, and I'm left with 2x minus 1. Okay, those match, so I know I'm on the right track. 2x minus 1. Those are my other pair, 3x plus 4. Okay, and then don't forget we have that x that we pulled out in the beginning. It's still part of the factors. All right, so now let's go on ahead and set all of these equal to 0. So x equals 0, 3x plus 4 equals 0, and 2x minus 1 equals 0. We need to solve every one of these. X equals 0 is already solved. That is an answer. Okay, so this right here is probably going to touch the x-axis 3 times because it's got a 3 right there. Neat trick. Okay, so let's go on ahead and solve for the second number. Okay, so we have 3x equals -4 divided by 3 divided by 3. So we have x equals -4/3 and plus 1 divided by 2. So x equals 1/2. Biggest mistake I see is students get really fast at this, and then you guys forget to change the signs on these. Okay, so if you get really fast and you stop doing this work here and subtracting from both sides, make sure that you keep the correct signs. Okay, all right, so those are my answers. That's where this, if I graph this on a calculator, that's where it's going to touch the graph. And to graph it on a calculator, you can actually see that we actually can do this. Okay. So let's take a look. So here, it gives us the steps. It says x squared minus 5x plus 6. Okay. So I'm going to clear this out. Okay. And I'm going to go to my y equals, and I'm going to type in, show you how we're doing it here. Let's see if I can get it all in there, at least most of it. So here I'm going to type in, well, I guess I'm going to have to do it this way. X squared minus 5x plus 6. And then I'm going to graph that. Okay. But now I need to figure out exactly where it touches, because if you look at it here, it looks like it touches in particular spots, but I'm not 100% sure where exactly it touches. Okay, so now I'm going to go to second, calculate, and number 2 there says 0. That's the one I want to choose. So I'm going to click, oh, not negative, so I'm going to click enter on that. Okay, so now here's the tricky part. See that little flashing cursor right there? I need to put it to the left of one of my zeros, and then I'm going to put it a little bit to the right of it. So in this case, I'm going to have to get right down there. So now you see it says, hey, where does this thing touch the x-axis between these two arrows? And it says, do you want me to guess? You're going to hit enter for yes. Okay, and it's going to say, well, there's a 0 at x equals 2. Okay, so x equals 2 would be one of your zeros. Okay. Then we're going to do the same thing. So we can go second, calculate or trace, choose number 2. So I'm going to hit enter to choose that. And now we're going to choose the next one. So for left bound, we're going to choose a spot. So a little bit to the left of this 0. And I'm going to hit enter to choose it. Then I'm going to go a little to the right of it. And I'm going to hit enter to choose this spot, the right bound. And then it says, hey, do you want me to guess? And the arrows show that we're finding a 0 somewhere in this area. I'm going to hit enter for yes. And I get x equals 3. Okay, so it chooses those zeros for you. Okay, So why don't you guys try it with this function right here, 6x squared plus 7x minus 3. Okay. Plug it in your calculator and see what you get. Pause it, and then we'll do it together and see if you get the same thing I got. Okay, so hopefully you've done it, but let's double check. So I'm in my y equals, and I'm going to type in 6x squared plus 7x minus 3. I'm going to graph that. Okay, now with this 2 right here, I know I should touch the x-axis 2 times. Okay, so 1, 2, it looks like I'm only touching it twice. So now to find my zeros, I'm going to hit second, trace, which is the calculate button. Scroll down to 0. You guys need to get used to doing this. You will see it a lot. Okay, and then I hit enter. Now I need to go to a point on the left of this 0 right here. So I'm finding this one first. Okay, it doesn't matter which one you find first. I just always like to find the one on the left first. So I'm going to go a little to the left of it and hit enter. Then I'm going to scroll until I'm just a little to the right of it and hit enter. Now it says, hey, do you want me to guess? Hit enter again. You do want it to guess. So my 0 then would be x equals negative 1.5. And now let's go ahead and do it again for this one. So I'm going to hit second trace. Scroll down to 0 because that's what I'm finding. Okay. I'm going to scroll a little to the left of it. Okay, it doesn't matter as long as you're just a little to the left. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. Now I'm going to scroll up until I'm a little to the right of it. Hit enter. And then I'm going to hit enter one more time for it to find that value for me. So then it says 1/3. Okay. And if I were to factor this and solve it, I would get the exact same thing. Okay. So you can use your calculator to check your work. We want you showing us your work of factoring them. This is just a method for you to check your work. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at solving using square roots. So this whole chapter is going to be about how we can find our x values when we have these equations, okay, various functions graphed. Okay, so this one is called a quadratic, but you notice it's only ax squared plus c. It does not have that middle term. We're going to use algebra to solve these, okay? And remember that when we take the square root of both sides, we have to do both the positive and the negative square roots. Okay, so I'm just going to solve this just like normal. I'm going to add 12 to both sides. And we get x squared equals 12. Now I need to take the square root of both sides. I do not want this in a decimal. You may not give this answer to me in a decimal. You need to find what this simplifies down to. So we're going to take 12 and we're going to do our little Christmas tree. Some of you do the little ladder trick. Okay, so 12, I can break down to 3 times 4. On the ladder trick, I might put a 3 here and my 4 would be here. 3 is a prime number, I circle it. Okay, but 4 breaks down to 2 times 2. Okay, so 2 times 2. So that is a pair. Okay, so our pairs always come out. And the reason is, this is what this would look like. The square root of 3 times 4, which is really the square root of 3 times the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 is 2. So that pair of 2's comes out as a single 2. Okay, so my answer then is 2 square roots of 3. Okay, but you need to make sure that you include both the positive and the negative. Okay, anytime we are adding a square root sign by taking a square root of something, or both sides, we have to do the plus and minus. If you don't do the plus and minus, you're going to lose points. Okay, so let's go on ahead and look at the next problem here. Okay, so I'm going to start. I have to get this all by itself first. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I get 3x squared equals 72. Then I'm going to do 72 divided by 3. Okay, I'm dividing both sides by 3 and I get x squared equals 24. Now I take the square root of both sides. Well, 24 is not a perfect square, so I'm going to have to break it down. I prefer the Christmas tree method. Whichever method you prefer is fine. Okay, so 24 breaks down to 8 times 3. Okay, 3 is already a prime number, meaning it's only divisible by 1 in itself. 8 is 2 times 4. 2 is a prime number. 4 breaks down to 2 times 2. So there's my pair. Okay, so what I'm going to write then is x equals plus or minus. This pair of 2's comes out as 1, 2. And this 2 times 3 stays underneath. So the 2 times 3, which really makes it plus or minus 2 times the square root of 6. And if you break it down this way and you like doing it this way, it's 2 times 4 times 3. Well, that 4 is coming out, and that 2 times 3 is just getting multiplied back together. And you could also do 6 times 4 here, but then you would still come out with some more numbers that you would have to factor to double check it. Okay, so I'm just writing it a little bit neater so you guys can see it. Now keep in mind that, you know, if you were to turn this into a decimal, it would be 2 times the square root of 6. So if you want to check your answer by graphing this, okay, you can graph this. Okay, you just have to type in 3x squared plus, okay, or minus 72, because it has to be equal to 0 here in order to graph it. And then you would find your 0 just like we did before, and your x value would come out, you know, as a big decimal like this. Okay, but once again, we don't want decimals. We need exact. Okay. This one right here, it's going to be the same thing, except here, so we're doing PEMDAS backwards, so please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So we're looking for any addition or subtraction, not in parentheses, there is none. Any multiplication or division, not in parentheses, there is none. Then we're going to do the exponent. So in this case, we have to take the square root first. So now we're going to wind up with x minus 4 equals plus or minus, well, the square root of 25 is 5. So now in this case, we have 2 problems to solve. X minus 4 equals positive 5, and x minus 4 equals negative 5. Okay, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides of both problems, and I get x equals 9 and x equals negative 1. So those are the 2 spots, this graph right here, x minus 4 squared minus 25, because I would have to have it set equal to 0. Okay, so if I was graphing it, I would type in x minus 4 squared minus 25. Okay. It would touch the x-axis at 9 and negative 1. Okay, you guys are going to need to become very good at this, just like factoring. We're going to be using this a lot. And it looks like that is it for 3.4. We'll move on to 3.5 next time. Have a great day.